joining us tonight on this week's edition of the Players Union. Tonight we will be talking about the teams most likely to vie for the draft, and then we will be previewing the Southeast Division. My name is Josh Wilson. I am the hashtag The True North on our Underdog Sports NBA Edition Facebook page.
Hey Josh, I'm Brendan, hashtag Jordan Pushed Off, representing the Jazz on Underdog Sports. Excited to be here.
Josh Magny, the human highlight meme, your Atlanta admin, excited as well.
I'm Rob, the Randall Laureate and everyone's favorite Knicks admin, and I'm very excited to talk about this tonight.
What does it take to be everyone's favorite Knicks admin? Sounds illustrious.
I think you've got to actually be a Knicks admin.
I feel like it takes more to be a Knicks admin than a Jazz admin.
It probably does. I don't think the Jazz get too much attention.
I mean, yeah, but in fairness, there's like 5 Jazz fans in the world as opposed to like the millions of Knicks fans that live on one street in New York.
We have one of like 10 living, breathing Jazz fans in our podcast.
That's fine. That's 10 more than I would expect. So,
yeah.
All right. So to start things off tonight, who do you guys think will be competing at the end of the year for the worst record in the regular season?
Well, before we dive into that, I want to just talk just for a brief second about an idea I heard someone do a couple years ago that I think would be awesome. I'm curious to get your guys' take. So instead of the NBA doing the lottery and, teams tanking, hoping they get more, ping pong balls, what would you think if they did like a tournament, right, of all the lottery teams, and in order to get the first pick, you had to win the tournament? Wouldn't that make it a little more exciting? You think people would be less likely to tank because if you're not going to make the playoffs, you still got to be good enough to get that first pick?
So having a secondary playoff is one thing, but I actually think they should do something that I do in one of my fantasy football leagues. It's 12 teams and 8 teams go to the playoffs. But whoever comes in 9th place gets the first overall pick. Whoever comes in 10th place gets the second. So imagine on the NBA, like the ones who just missed the playoffs. So they're fighting toward the end to get there. And they're still competing. You have to compete to get that first pick. And that first pick's, realistically on our end as a fan, how much better would it be if, who's someone that just missed the playoffs last year that was a really good team? Like, let's say,
have to be in the West.
The Raptors were close.
Well, let's take the.
Yeah, but he said a good team.
Yeah. Well, okay, good point.
But like if we look at it, for instance, let's say let's get rid of the play-in game, and so it would have been Golden State in the West fighting to get to that spot. And imagine if they ended up getting the number 1 overall pick. It'd be cool to see a number all pick. Realistically, the Thunder are probably going to get the first overall pick. They have the best odds to get it. Whoever goes to the Thunder or the Rockets, they're going to a dumpster fire, and we're not going to get to see them do anything for a while. So imagine if they went to a slightly better team.
Yeah, I love it. I think anything that would just make it a little more interesting and competitive. And I agree with you too. I think how cool would it be to see that number 1 pick with a contender, their first year, but it doesn't happen very often. Anyway, sorry, I totally side railed us there, but I just thought it was an interesting idea.
I like that idea.
But as far as the I was gonna say, as far as the question, like, I think we know generally and would probably agree on the 5 worst teams. And I mean, those are more likely going to be the Thunder, the Rockets, the Pistons, the Magic, and the Cavs. Like, in some order, those are probably going to be the guys.
Kings probably up there too.
Maybe you could get the Kings up there. I mean, they have more talent than, others. So but I think generally speaking, we know that the 2 worst teams are probably going to be the Thunder and the Rockets, or Rockets in particularly. I do like SGA, see what he can do, kind of, keep on growing. But I think those are going to be universally everyone's view top 5.
Yeah,
I agree. 5.
Go ahead, man.
I see it with the Rockets, the Pistons, the Cavs, the Kings, and the Raptors. I don't see you have the Thunder in there.
I mean,
Thunder are a pretty solid team.
You think the Thunder is a pretty solid team?
I think if SGA and the other young guys like Dort and a few others take the steps I'm expecting them to this year, they'll be about mid-table.
Yeah, I think you're right to a point, but the Thunder play in the West, right? Like, I think if you threw OKC in like the Southeast or the Central Division and stuff, you got a fringe playoff team. You put OKC in the West, and I think they're going to be sitting down there in the bottom. And I think by midpoint of the season, you might even see them trying to offload some talent to really secure that spot. I think I don't know if I'd call them a dark horse, but the team I really think you'll see that number 1 spot might be the Orlando Magic, who we're going to talk about in the Southeast Division. I think everything they've done this offseason has indicated to me that they're like, yeah, we're done. We're doing a full restart. I mean, they got rid of some significant talent that was keeping them competitive, and they're not even trying to replace it at this point. So, I mean, I think they're openly advocating to their fan base, yeah, we're going to suck. We want that number 1 pick. So I wouldn't be shocked at all to see the Magic jump in that spot. I think Houston actually surprisingly might. They're not going to be a playoff team, but you look in that division right now, and I know we'll talk about that some other night, but you've got the Pels, the Spurs, the Grizzlies, who none of which put a lot of fear in you, and the Mavs, who are pretty good. The Rockets could surprise some people, but I think the Magic are going to be in that number 1 spot.
I mean, the Magic could be there. They got rid of, like, pretty much everyone from, like, Fournier, Gordon. I think they got rid of Fultz. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But if they get a number 1 overall pick, I'm not really scared of who they get per se. Their player development over since the White left hasn't been anything.
I'm really on the Rockets comment. Yeah, that division's terrible. Like, are the Mavericks the best team, and they're like an 8 seed, a 7 seed? I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know if Ja's going to be able to carry Memphis, and the Spurs are probably looking for a rebuild. Yes, I guess I could see that. The Thunder and the Rockets being in a terrible division, maybe sneaking up a little bit, but like you said, the Magic, that they are going to be bad.
Yeah, intentionally bad.
I'm trying to think, like, who's going to start for the Magic? Like, Wagner, he's going to start, but I mean, they did lose Porter.
I think Fultz is still there. I don't think they got rid of Fultz, but I could be wrong. I thought he was still there.
They still have what's-his-face from Florida State.
Isaac.
Jonathan Isaac, Robin Lopez, and we'll get more into them too.
Yeah, I'll save my opinion on them until when we get into them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It will be interesting. That's where the playoff thought came into my head of considering the number one pick, because I actually think this will be one of the most competitive seasons for that number one pick I think we're going to see, because there's some really good teams in the NBA and then a lot of garbage. So I think you'll see pretty decent competition there. Throw them in a playoff. Let them fight for it. I'd watch.
Honestly, I'd want to fight to the death like that. Fuck it.
I don't know about to the death, but
those teams be scratching and clawing their way to a number one pick.
Well, I've got to wonder if at some point, with all the competition for the first overall pick, and teams, attempting to, I don't know, quote unquote, lose games, because we all know that doesn't actually happen. If that'll affect the actual playoff race when teams are playing, teams that are trying to win.
I don't know. I mean, you hate to see it when you've got a team that's really fighting hard for that number one spot and they go up against someone who plays their starters, and then you've got another team who's in the same position, same night, playing against a team who's already melded in, right? Like it seems like it creates an unfair advantage. I'll tell you what would be really fascinating that will never happen is if the NBA adopted a English Premier League type structure where a G League team could be promoted up to the NBA if they could beat out the last place team. I'd love to see the Houston Rockets get relegated.
No, let's have the Bobcats get relegated, man.
Yeah, I wish we had a better G League system. Like I wish the NBA, and I think it's coming, every NBA team have a legitimate G League team and start doing the farm. Name, image, and we can go name, image, likeness, how that's going to affect college basketball. I mean, are you going to have as many freshmen one and done people if they're making money in college? That'd be a good topic for us to kind of bring up. Because I mean, if I'm making $5 million playing at Duke, do I really want to go and make $5 million as a rookie? And you might be able to make more.
Right.
It's interesting too. If you look at some of the people that are expected to go high in the draft, there are a few G Leaguers in there, right? That just skipped college that are playing in the G League. You've got multiple players who are playing in European leagues and stuff that are going directly pro. I put in air quotes. You can't see it, but they're playing in these lower leagues instead of going to college. The desire is there. People want to make money. And if you have the talent, I'm not opposed to them getting paid.
But see, that's the thing is I think a college star is going to make more money than a G League star. So I think you're going to get more, like I think we started to see where the G League was starting to take off, and this name and likeness is probably going to kill it because you're going to be able to make a lot more money playing in college, getting those sponsorships.
Yeah, it's a really good point. That's a huge change. I think that will change the game quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not basketball, but I was reading an article a couple of weeks ago about how much money Trevor Lawrence lost due to the fact that this new rule has come up the year after he was drafted.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he lost a lot of money. I mean, Bryce Young signed $1 million contract before ever throwing a touchdown. Freaking Quinn Evers or whatever, the guy who left high school early because Texas wouldn't allow him to make money. I think he's got like $1 million contract already.
And Spencer Rattler getting a good bit of money as well.
Yeah, he's got a good bit of money, but not as much as these top high school prospects, which, again, football, I think football on the lower level is going to make more money than basketball on the lower level. Like a star quarterback in college is going to make more money than, like, I don't think we'll get maybe like someone like Zion if someone comes around like that who's a YouTube sensation. Like maybe he could sign a big $1 million contract in college for a year. But, I don't see that many of the college guys getting that kind of impact.
I see North Carolina being a desirable college for, as much as I hate him as a Duke fan, being a desirable college for the kids because they get the Jordan sponsorship for playing there for at least a year.
Mm-hmm.
So being a technical Jordan brand athlete gets your name out there a bit.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're about halfway through now, so we'll shift the conversation to previewing the Southeast Division. For those that don't know, the Southeast Division is the Miami Heat, the Atlanta Hawks, Washington Wizards, Orlando Magic, and the Charlotte Bobcats, or whatever the heck they're calling themselves now.
I'm going to lead us off on this one because I want to give Josh enough time to respond to what I'm going to say about his Hawks. But you go down through this division. I mean, I think Atlanta overachieved last year based on their talent, making to the Eastern Conference Finals. And you look at what the Miami Heat have done, and I want to say this is a 2-horse race. I think this is a 1-horse race. I think the Heat, with Kyle Lowry, adding P.J. Tucker, who if the Jazz would have got P.J. Tucker, we would have won a championship last year, man. Guy's a defensive stud, makes shots when your team needs shots. Got Jimmy Butler. Udonis Haslem, 41 years old, still a rebound machine, man. Ageless wonder. But I think the Heat have done nothing but improve. I think the Hawks have been really quiet. Still, obviously very good. And I'm a University of Utah grad, so DeLon Wright being picked up by the Hawks, I love DeLon Wright. But he's not a sexy player. He's a consistent, good role player. I think the Heat added talent. I think the Hawks kind of stayed pat where they're at. So I think Heat go first. I think Hawks finish second, and then I think the rest of the division's just kind of garbage, for lack of a better phrase.
So, to refute the blasphemy that you just spouted.
I was waiting. I knew it.
Okay, so let's talk about overachieving. We think Miami is some great team because they did well in the bubble. Like, that's like, what has Jimmy Butler done his whole career? Like, he's been a good player his whole career, and all of a sudden everyone tries to make him out to be some superstar guy in the bubble, this super, his play style, blah, blah, blah. The Heat overachieved in the bubble. We think way too highly of them.
I don't disagree with that.
Tyler Hero is not a good starting 2-guard. He's not. He's below average. Like, if you ranked all 30 starting 2-guards, he's not in the top 15. He's probably not in the top 20. And, Duncan Robinson's okay. He's a defensive, Bam, he's not he's a younger version of DeAndre Jordan. Like,
that's not bad.
Yeah, but I mean, he's not he's not going to be, like, what did the Clippers ever do? Like, and that Miami Heat team is nowhere near as good as that Clippers team was. And so, like, and I look at the Hawks, the Hawks didn't, do a whole bunch. You mentioned DeLon Wright. He's the 3rd string point guard. He's 3rd string. He's not a guy that's going to be expected to come in and play. I mean, he is literally the 11th guy off the bench. I mean, the depth that, and you got to think too, I mean, last year, whenever they were playing, you had, Gallinari coming off the, bench, then we ended up having to move him more often. But we had to do that, because, what's his freaking name? I'm blanking on it right now. DeAndre Hunter got hurt in the playoffs. So DeAndre Hunter coming back, Cam Reddish didn't come back to the playoffs. I mean, just listen to the 2 deep, just the 2 deep. It's Trey and Lou. And then after that, you got Bogdanovich and Huerter, Red Velvet. And then after that, you got Hunter and Cam Reddish. And then after that, you got Collins and Gallinari. And then after that, you got Capella, and we brought in Jang only because Okanagu got hurt, or whatever, how you pronounce his name. The 2 deep for Atlanta, while they're not A-listers, it's the best depth in basketball, hands down, the 2 deep. And I think that's going to play in a lot in the regular season by getting a lot of guys involved. They're tall, they're shooters. Trey is one of the best mid-range floaters in the game. I do think his issue is, he can shoot a 40-footer, not consistently though. Like there's so many times he just pulls up. Like he's like what a 34% career shooter. Like dude, I know you want to be similar to Steph, but like you shoot too. Like he doesn't need to be shooting 8 threes a game. He needs to be shooting about 4 or 5 a game at most. But just the depth, like I said, Delon Wright is third string. Jang, when Okongwu comes back, is going to be third string. Like, it's a ridiculous lineup. And I don't think,
and then like Oladipo as a shooting guard. You've got Butler in there. You've bashed on Tyler Hero, which is totally fine, but they upgraded by bringing in Kyle Lowry. I think the Heat from a defensive mindset are going to give the Hawks all sorts of problems when they play. And defense travels. That's my biggest thing. I think the Heat's going to be a better defensive team than Atlanta. I think Atlanta might finish the regular season in a better spot, but come playoff time when you need to make those key stops and get those key baskets, I like what the Heat have better than the Hawks.
But look what the Hawks did last year. Like the Knicks were one of the best defensive teams, crushed them. The Sixers were one of the best defensive teams, beat them.
Yeah, but the Knicks had no offense though. They're really good defense.
If it wasn't for, there is not a consistent 20-point scorer on the Heat right now. Like maybe if Oladipo, I don't know if he's playing off ball, if he'll be able to do it as much, but like Jimmy Butler's not a consistent 20-point a night guy. He
averaged 21.5 last season, so define a consistent 20-point guy.
Like out of necessity, he had to do that. Like he's not he can go out and score 40. We saw that in the playoffs, but like he's at his best when he, like you said, he's playing defense. He's moving around, in that 17 to 18 range as far as points. Like if you're having to lean on him to score you points, you're not in a good position.
Well, so Randall Lauren, you got to break this tie. I mean, tell Josh why he's wrong. Come on, man.
I do want to say, I might be the next admin, but the Heat have been my second team for a while. I was a huge D-Wade fan growing up, but that's besides the point. I would try to watch as much as I can. Jimmy Butler is consistently a 20-point guy. I don't know where Josh is pulling that out of. Tyler Hero, while he's probably a top 15 starting shooting guard in the league, yes, I will say that. He's going to come off the bench to shoot as Oladipo being in the lineup. I feel like they got worse getting rid of Dragic for Kyle Lowry, but they can say about the same with that. Bam is better than DeAndre Jordan has ever been as well, for your comparison there. The Heat is one of the best defensive teams in the league, and if they could shut down Trae Young, I think they could probably shut down that whole Atlanta offense.
Well, it's just interesting you compare Bam to DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan was a rebound machine without an offensive skill set. Bam averages almost 20 points a game.
That's what I'm getting at. It's literally like, I want to say Kevin Garnett, but Kevin Garnett's too good. I want to say he's almost like a modern day, like Kevin Garnett light.
I like it. KG light. I like it.
Yeah, I like that too.
I think he is vastly overrated.
He's just not good as KJ.
He made Team USA. I mean, how could he be overrated and make this Olympic team?
Yeah, it's not like we put our top 50 guys on that team. It's
one more thing. How we said the Hawks have the best depth in all of basketball if they're 1-2 combos. I think the Lakers want a word.
I will take that all day. I mean, if you take the second string of what's your second string on the Lakers?
So I'm trying to think. It'd be what? Westbrook, Rondo.
Westbrook. So Rondo's your starting. So who's your starting two? Your starting two is going to be Malik Monk, maybe.
Him and KCP, I guess, would rotate.
KCP's gone. He's at Washington.
Oh.
So you got Malik Monk, Rondo, your three. Who's the three going to be? Trevor Ariza? No, he'll probably play 4. So Melo will play the 4. But who's your three? THT. So THT is going to be your second string small forward. Your second string power forward's probably going to be Melo. Your second string center's probably going to be old man who's an old 32, DeAndre Jordan. Like I say, he's old 32 because he looks older than everyone else on the Lakers, even though he's one of the younger guys.
Yeah.
So like,
I get where they have great depth. It's just I feel like the Lakers have beat out not by a lot, but barely.
I don't see a better second string in all the league, and I think injuries play a huge factor. I mean, I think Miami Heat are a clear second best team, and I just don't, even with the Lowry move. I mean, he's 35 now, and I mean, how much more in the tank does he have? Duncan Robinson's going to come off the bench. Tyler Hero's going to come off the bench, but is PJ Tucker going to start?
I doubt he'll start. I think he'll be that role player, but PJ just has that. He's one of those players that every team needs, right? Like he's that glue. I think the Bucks got markedly better when PJ joined him. He's just a good defensive player, has a lot of intensity, makes key shots. But you know what, Josh, I got to give you props. So you're sitting there talking about the Hawks. I'm going down the roster. I'm like, dang it. He might be right. I think the Heat have a chance, but I'm curious to know what you guys think, though. Like, I think it's very clear the Heat and Hawks are the two best teams. Is there anyone else in this division that's even remotely close to a playoff contender?
Honestly, Charlotte could potentially be like a 9 seed. They might just miss if they have like everything go right development wise.
I will say this about the Hornets. I think they're a team that can probably run better than any team in the league.
Yeah, they are one of the fastest teams in the league.
I mean, they're in fast break between LaMelo pushing the ball. I mean, Gordon Hayward's going to be your slow guy that comes at the end if you don't get the layup, kick it out to him because he's just now getting there. But Kelly Oubre, Mason Plumlee, they got one of the hardest working, fastest moving centers out there in Mason Plumlee, Terry Rozier, PJ Washington, Bridges, like they got runners. So I think in transition, their transition game is going to be very scary, but I think where they're going to suffer is just in the half court. It's an okay roster. But yeah, I don't think they got depth to, like you said, maybe they'll make the 9th seed, get the playoffs, be a playing game, but they'd be the next closest one. I don't think Washington's got a shot. Even though they are very interesting. And like you said, I think Orlando is intentionally trying to be terrible.
All right, guys, we're just about done. So I'd like to get predictions on the way the division will finish, the order the teams will finish in.
Well, I mean, despite Josh's best efforts, I still think the Heat will edge out the Hawks. But he did convince me the Hawks are a little bit better on paper than I thought they were. I'm actually really curious, and you mentioned this, Josh, about the Wizards. I think you've got a bunch of players who were cast off basically by the Lakers who have something to prove. It'll be interesting to see how that team melds. I don't think they'll be good enough to be above the Hornets. I picked the Hornets to be the number 3 in the Southeast, but I think the Wizards are going to be right there with them pretty much the whole season. And then I think Orlando clearly is the worst team in this division and probably the worst team in the NBA, in my opinion, next year.
I'm going to say... Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say that it probably goes Atlanta, Miami. They're maybe separated by a game, maybe half a game. And then you'd go Charlotte, Washington, Orlando. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, we're pretty similar. I'm still a toss-up on Charlotte. I'm going to go Hawks, Heat. I'm still trying to toss up between the Hornets and the Wizards. The Wizards are super interesting. We didn't go into much depth in it, but I mean, Spencer Dinwiddie and Bradley Beal with KCP coming off the bench. He might even start at the 3. Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell. I mean, that's a decent, starting five. I mean, I want to see what their rotation is going to look like, how they play. Thomas Bryant, he's still a good defensive rebounding center. Aaron Holiday, I've always liked him. I've liked the Holidays in general. So I could see a flip on the Hornets or the Wizards either way. It's an interesting matchup. And yeah, the Orlando, while I think they have dudes, I like Isaac. I don't like them at all. Yeah. I'm curious though with Washington, what's going to happen with Beal. I just can't picture Beal still being there by the trade deadline. And I think that's going to be and it's not going to affect the division too much because I doubt they trade him in division. But that's the one move, the most exciting talking point for the division outside of, how guys are playing is what's going to happen with Bradley Beal. Because he's the only tradable guy in the division, right? Like the only guy maybe Cam Reddish for the Hawks. We might trade him as a good value trade. Because, he's kind of a redundant situation considering we just picked up Jalen Johnson, who was like a lottery guy that fell. So I do think, Cam Reddish is probably on the block too with Bradley Beal.
All right. Go ahead, Rob.
Just one final thought. I feel like Tyler Hero might get moved on from the Heat if he doesn't produce well this year.
What, that mean mugging?
Yeah, him. He might get moved on.
He's.
I don't know. It's going to be a fun one, though. I'm really curious about it. I think Heat Hawks, every time they play this year, it's going to be a good game.
Yeah, this will be another fun division.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this division. Super excited about it. I think it's probably the second. It's very top heavy. I'll put it that way. It's very top heavy. I think the Heat and the Hawks are legitimate teams.
All right. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight on the Players Union. We'll see you next week.
Hey, man. Thanks for having us.
Sounds good.